You are listening to Autistic Stuff for Autistic People, a podcast from the Autistic Peer Support Coaching Collective and Fox and Raven Media. I am Aradia. I am the creatively autistic coach and the podcast producer for Fox and Raven Media.
And I'm Mati, and I'm an autistic peer support coach and rabbinical student and spiritual director.
All right, so welcome back to Autistic Stuff for Autistic People. Today, we were thinking about talking about creativity and how we can use that to reconnect with ourselves and sort of work on regulating ourselves and even being aware of our dysregulation and coming back to ourselves, which is a topic which my handle, the creatively autistic coach, would suggest is kind of up my alley. And it is very much up my alley. When Mati suggested talking about that today, I was like, oh yes, this topic. I could go on for hours and hours about this topic. This is very much what I have been working on in many ways for my whole life, but also very consciously for the past couple of months to years. And so, I have lots and lots of stuff to say about it. Physical creativity, mental creativity. There's just so many different forms. Creativity just for the sake of doing something with your hands and eyes versus doom scrolling, all the way up through the creativity of like actually making something useful and practical. There's just so many different ways that it's helpful. And I find that it's really useful even for just identifying what's going on with me, right? Like there's different kinds of creativity appeal to different kinds of dysregulation. And I can sometimes use that to navigate my alexithymia. What sort of creativity is calling to me? That indicates what has been going on for me. And it also is really physically regulating. I recently went on a trip, and when I got back, instead of doom scrolling, I made myself go into my sewing room. And after a couple of days, I felt so much more landed than I normally would have after travel, because, getting into your phone is another form of travel. So, for me, there's a wide variety. Singing, sewing, making podcasts is also another form of creative expression for me that keeps me grounded on a weekly basis. I got a lot of branches I could go with this. So, Mati, why don't you tell me where you kind of want to go with this conversation and what has been coming up for you?
I also want to add that creative thinking is another thing, right? Not just making, whether productive or for no reason, but even this creative thinking I find is really, pretty cool. I love this idea of recognizing our own dysregulation, actually. I hadn't thought about that before you said it, but now I'm going to riff on it for a bit. But not yet. But more about why did I come into the studio today and want to talk about that, of all things. Creativity is a big value for me. Like, yes, creative thinking, but also art, creating, tactical, like with your hands. I'm gesticulating with my fingers on this here in the studio. Creative writing. And it's something that was very much kind of driven out of me at a young age. When I was a kid, I painted like you would not believe. Loved painting. Loved writing fictional little stories about all whales who were ninjas and going to space and all sorts of things. That just connected different things I liked. And I loved writing. And I loved creating worlds and creating my own universes, my own, with maps and kingdoms and the history of the kingdoms. And this is before I even knew Lord of the Rings existed as a thing. So, by the way, But I was probably actually more influenced by Tolkien's best friend.
Mr. Lewis?
Lewis. Yeah, Mr. Lewis, whose books I was exposed to from a very young age. But also, I grew up in a Jewish home, where we read the Bible and the Torah and all these stories. And there's lots of things in worlds and things, right? And I just loved making my own books as a kid. I would take cardboard and I would staple things in and I would draw and I would make comic books and I would write stories and I would illustrate them. I loved that. And by the time I got into school in earnest, I had to drop it because all the other kids would make fun of me. Not necessarily because I was bad at it, not because that was all I did. So everyone made fun of me for it. I was the kid who was always painting. I was the kid who was always writing stories. They would tell me my stories stink. And I was like, I kind of got over it. And not to say that I didn't come back to it over the years here and there, but I didn't really get to go into it with a big passion. And in my adult life, I've been exploring more, right? And I've been writing since for a long time now, and been happy to write. But I was still missing out on that physical art stuff. I never really got back into it. And sometimes I would, I'll pick up my guitar and I'll fuck around with that, or I'll go to the art store and I'll buy a canvas and some paint or coloring books, but not really into the big thing. And then I said, I want to start doing some more stuff. And I saw there was a paper making class, right? Paper marbling class. I'm going to go to that. I'm going to learn how to marble some paper. And I really liked that. Started playing around with that more. Bought my own marbling kit. Started doing things here. Started doing tutorials. Started going to more classes. Brings you to bookbinding. Going to a bookbinding class. And I found myself now going to courses. And thinking about doing an apprenticeship. And my living room looks like a studio now, to my spouse's sometimes chagrin, though sometimes they join me in doing it. And I've been on this. I've turned my living room into a creative book arts studio for the better part of the last 6 months or so. And it's been extremely helpful for my soul, for my mental health, my regulation. But I don't want to say most importantly, but maybe most importantly to the people listening to this, like it's helped me in my own day-to-day work as a peer support coach. It helped me reconnect, like by able to reconnect with myself and reconnect to this piece of myself, it helps me to reconnect to the people I support and to the people I teach. And that's been really powerful. And I'm really grateful for it. And so yeah, I came into Aradia. I was like, let's talk about creativity and what that means and what it gives to us. You mentioned this dysregulation thing. It helps you recognize dysregulation. Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, it's something that I noticed first with a much more passive hobby of mine, which is consuming podcasts and audiobooks like oxygen. I just consume them constantly. And I started to notice that I was going back to old familiar stuff when I was more dysregulated, and I would be more interested in new content when I was more regulated. And I noticed it there, but I have since observed that there's other bellwethers in other areas, like my more active hobbies, like sewing, for example. Sometimes I go into my sewing room and all I have the energy to do is like tidy stuff up and disarticulate clothing that I don't want as clothing anymore. I just want the materials from it. Other times I'm ready to like design a new whatever disastrous project I'm going to design, do something much more forward and creative. And it's always correlated with like where I'm at in my day, my week, my month, what my mood is. And sometimes I don't really know what's going on with me, and I'll just go into my sewing room, and after like half an hour I realize what it is that I've gravitated towards doing, and it's like, so that's what's going on with me. I'm feeling like super, like sometimes I have this like pent up creative need to make something, so I'm like starting a whole new project and I'm like already halfway through making it. Other times I'm just quietly cutting stuff up. It's like those are very different states of mind, and I didn't really know what I needed, but I knew that doom scrolling on my phone or playing Candy Crush was not good for me. So I went and just sort of stood in my sewing room until my hands found their way into a task. And yeah, that's kind of how that's been working for me lately.
It's really cool. We often speak, you and I and our colleagues, about how our emotions always are coming out and always showing themselves. Like that, emotions are like water, right? Like water will always find the place of least resistance to come out, right? It's not necessarily going to be near the quote unquote leak. And because a lot of us deal with alexithymia, it can be hard to understand what our emotions are, understand our regulation, because we don't necessarily know how to read ourselves. Sometimes we talk about like, oh, maybe you might be able to tell based on the music that you're listening to, right? Classic example I use in a lot of my classes. Say like, I know if I'm listening to the Smiths, that's going to tell me something much more about my emotional state than if I'm listening to Elvis. And it can help me have a lot of insight into myself and where I might be. and recognize that, like, oh, maybe if I'm on a Smith's day, that, like, maybe, like, I should take it a little bit slower because that might lead to more easier dysregulation, have a lesser tolerance or window of tolerance. And I found with, with book arts as of late, I'm also able to tell my mood. I'm able to tell, like, am I in a good place, am I in a more fragile place? Right? Not just like in my ability to, like, do I want to get started on a project? Do I not want to get started on a project? Because, like, sometimes I want to get started on a project because I'm anxious, but sometimes I want to get started on a project because I'm excited. Right? They're different kind of things, but also, like, which books am I deciding to bind? So, like, my whole process is that I like to take books of friends or books that I own to rebind, or friends' books to rebind, and I like to marble the paper myself. Right? So based on what that project might look like, create a paper which would be for part of the cover or for the end papers that are kind of based in that person or based in the book or both, right? So I create the papers according to that. I choose the cloth or the leather according to that. I choose my fonts of which I'm going to emboss on. That's that becomes an expensive hobby because, for each type of letter you need to get different types of type. But what's fun is that I'm part of a little collective here that has lots of stuff. So it's like kind of like a WeWork for collective. So, like, they have lots of different type, right? To put into the embossing machine, to get to get your letters, like, on the spines and things like that. And I try to really create it around, like, my friend or myself or the book or my mood. And I'm noticing that, like, in my choices on materials very often, like, I can see, like, if I'm more into an easier pattern on the marbling versus one that's more complicated. Am I noticing that on my cuts when I'm cutting board? Am I having to go back a few times because I'm not as focused when I'm doing my measurements? I think there can be times where I do the measurement wrong 4 times, and I mix up, right, with my dyscalculia. I mess up some numbers, and I can find that when I'm more focused and more kind of grounded, that's happening less, right? I'm actually able to see a lot into, like, get a view into my inner state through these external signs. And now it's another external sign in my toolkit, right? I have my music. I have what TV shows do I watch at night. I see what kind of, do I put a t-shirt on versus a button-down shirt? Do I put on soft cotton shorts versus denim shorts, right? Do I put on sandals versus sneakers, right? All these kind of various ways of that I can tell. Am I getting delivery versus, I just realized I didn't eat today? Delivery versus cooking, right? Like, it's another tool in my war chest, or war in my tool chest. I don't know. English is complicated. Now all I'm thinking about is pizza.
Ha!
Oh, we didn't talk about creativity and cooking.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. That's very real, both in terms of producing food and desiring food. Those are both very creative acts that, yeah, can also be very indicative of things. I can even tell when I'm editing. Like, I edit 4 different podcasts, and I can tell sometimes I get a lot more aggressive with my edits when I'm in a crankier mood. And I'm like, you know what? No, shut up. You're being silly. I'm deleting that entire tangent. We didn't need any of that. And then other times I'm in a really good, like, free floating, we're like, oh, this was a great conversation. Everything's good. I don't know if I assume that is more reflective of me, the editor, than it is of the actual content of the podcast in question. Because it's usually the same podcast that I'm having these thoughts about, my main weekly show. Yeah, it comes out in so many different ways. Or you were talking about creative thinking. I mean, think about just positive and negative sides of daydreaming, right? If you're in a very anxious, dysregulated state, maybe that creative energy is going towards less positive imaginings than if you're, in a different headspace and more interested in imagining more fun stuff.
And I think, like, on the one hand, maybe anyone listening to this is like, oh my god, like, Aradia and Mati, like, okay, like, you guys want to have a fucking medal? Like, you're speaking creativity again. Oh, autistic people like making art. Autistic people like making maps. Autistic people like making podcasts and sewing. Like, this is nothing new. And no, dear edgelord listening on the other end of the mic or the Spotify, that isn't new. And guess what? We say in Hebrew, Ein chadash mitachat hashemesh. There's nothing new under the sun. It's about talking about it and rehashing it, right? Which is itself a creative act, and making new connections, right? This is fun. And in case nobody's listening to this, we're still having fun talking about it, right? I don't sell these books that I make. I give them as gifts to friends. And people go, why don't you monetize it? Well, like, you don't need to monetize every piece of creative thing in your life. You don't need to have an audience for every creative thing in your life that's beyond even just yourself. Though sometimes it's nice that you have somebody say it. It's nice, but like not all of it is even for that. Sometimes it's just for us, right? And I think getting in touch with that, because I think a big thing of a lot of autistic creativity is that we connect our autistic creativity to our special interests, quote unquote. And then people then are like, well, let's monetize. I see a lot of our colleagues out there in the world of autistic coaches monetize your special interests and then you'll never have to work again. Well, that's like really bad fucking advice for a lot of people, because the creativity is very often not being used as this thing for productivity and not as a way to make money, but as a way of being able to reconnect to that other kind of stuff. I think the day that I have to make a living out of my creativity, I would die. Not because I want to, but because like it would take that, it would lose that, it would take that power out of it. Now that could be true for me. For Aradia, it's not true, right? In the same way. And versus another person that might not be different in another way. Versus somebody else who's like, they absolutely want to make their special interests or their creativity and monetize their creativity. And that might work for them. That's great. But I think as a blanket piece of advice, it's not that great. And so the point of talking about this was, what can creativity do for you, only you, not for money, not for prestige, but for you. And again, that probably sounds a little rambly, but it's a podcast, so so a podcast is a bunch of autistic people.
It's autistic stuff for autistic people. That's what we're doing here. And I mean, really, it's connection is one of the biggest things that creativity does for me, either to myself, as we've talked about, or like you mentioned earlier, it helps you connect, has been helping you connect with other people. Podcasting is totally the way that I've connected with most of my friends at this point. Like following that creative thread. Yes, there's been a monetary aspect to it, but it has not turned into a mortgage payment. But it has turned into a robust social network of people whom I have shared real life experiences with and different creative endeavors that are more short lived than the main podcast, events. I mean, I have helped be part of a community that has gotten multiple people married, right? Like it's all stemming from the desire to have this shared creativity, these podcasts where it's like, well, I don't know if anyone's going to listen, but we're going to put it out there. And then here we are, years upon years later with these robust social networks that have come together for real serious stuff that isn't creative, as well as other creative endeavors. It's been very good for helping me connect with people, and also connecting with people on my own terms as an autistic person who wants to live in the woods and not really see people in like physical reality super often. It has been a community of people who connect through the internet, through Zoom, through Discord, and occasionally will fly to see each other at conventions. And that has been, we creatively made a community with a model that actually works for a lot of us who are autistic or neurodivergent in other ways. So that's also been really cool, not following standard social models for what we have to do to build community. We just creatively sort of winged it, and it's been working for years now, which is very cool.
And that brings up another thing for me. This is what I love these conversations, because then like that leads to something else. How do I put this in words that make sense to, like, so I'm thinking about like your friends and people get married. Like, I absolutely am fucking obsessed with like getting to nerd out with other people in book arts. Like going to other artist studios and nerding out over like here. So I have a bunch of different little toolboxes and things that I keep different things in. I'm not gonna do too much, but like this box that I'm holding, it's a smaller box. This is one that I use just for my bone folders and my Teflon folders, right, which are like these small kind of stick-looking things of varying lengths and thicknesses to fold different materials and to work in and to burnish things, right, with different shapes and angles on them. And you do them for different things. Like someone's like, why do you need more than one? Because they do different jobs for different types of things and different materials, right? You're going to use some different one with cotton than you might use for leather, or even cotton that's backed onto paper versus unbacked, right? Like that getting nerdy. And it's like talking about like last week I had a 45-minute conversation about compasses. Like this, like, you know, like measuring compasses, like this. Like, so here's another one of my toolboxes, right?
Okay, that one looks really cool.
And like, it's like a compass like this. Like, you know, what, like the ones that you know, like a measuring compass, folks. And like ones that you can adjust from here versus here, and why a compass is better than a ruler. And then we nerded out about this. So I bought another kind of thing, right? Like, and you develop like a love of your tools, and you talk about it, and you nerd about it. And you, like, it's community. It's community, right? And I love it. And like, I find even like I've been in writing groups before, right? In writing communities, which are often super cool, right? And I like them. But also, like, when most people are in those writing groups, I find the ones that I've been in, at least, and I know they exist, and I know that our friend Chris Norton hosts a writing group where people are there like as for fun, right, as opposed to like professional. But I find that the ones I've always been to have been more professional ones. And what's super fun is that like a lot of the artists that I meet, they're professionals, but a lot of the people I meet at their studios who are also there nerding out aren't, right? And that's fun. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but I just love being able to be around other people and nerd out. And again, edgelords listening. Oh, that's what all autistic people love, socializing with people who are into the things that they're into. Yeah, obviously, it's another example of that. And another avenue, because that's not Reddit, right? That's not sitting behind a keyboard, right? But another avenue to do that, right? Which I think a lot of us don't think of. Like, think about like, oh, I'm going to meet people in autism groups. I'm going to meet people in things around my special interests. But like, it's not just about the interests, right? It's not just about being with other book nerds, but people who are making the books.
Yes.
And I'm developing now for my own peer support practice for my in-person sessions over here to actually have people come over into my office, and we're going to actually, while talking through like our stuff we're doing in coaching, we're going to make some paper, or we're going to make a notebook, or we're going to rebind their favorite book, and we're going to do it while talking, and to see how that plays up.
Yeah, that quintessential, I can't talk if we're just sitting there staring at each other. If we start working on something, now we can go. That's so classic. My mom, my uncle, my brother. It's like, yeah. It's such an easier way to have a conversation if you have a project to work on while you do it. Yeah, I get a lot more sewing done when my mom's around, because then we are, encouraging each other to get in there and get a project done. And then we end up talking about all kinds of stuff while we're working. It's just so much more both creative and social if we do both at the same time.
What are you guys into? Right? I want us to get, like, we're in this new iteration of the podcast where we're going to have different people from our collective on. We're going to have different guest hosts. We're going to have kind of spontaneous topics from our guest hosts who are coming on. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's get interactive. Let's see how many of you are really listening and want to be part of this community. Hell, maybe you want to be on the podcast and come talk about your thing. We'd love to have you. What are you into? How are you relating with creativity? Send us an email. Send us a message on Instagram. Let us know. Talk to us.
And if you're really struggling with finding creativity, then maybe we can talk that out with you and help you discover the creativity that is actually already there in your life that you're just not quite recognizing or engaging with in a way that you want to yet. Who knows?
Yeah, or don't feel safe enough to yet.
Yeah, because creativity is a pretty intrinsic part of the human experience, and we all deserve the joy that comes from being able to engage with that. So tell us about it. Let's talk about it. Let's continue to engage in what brings that up for us. And until next time, subscribe to the podcast, share us with your friends, and be patient with us as we work through this beginning of a new phase of the show.
You can learn more about our work at autisticcoaches.com and the Autistic Peer Support Coaching Collective. We are autistic peer support coaches who are all autistic, who help support our fellow autistics all over the world in learning how to thrive in a world based on productivity where we want to not do that. That wasn't the most eloquent way of putting it, but that's what we do. Check us out, autisticcoaches.com. Stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Autistic Stuff for Autistic People. As a reminder, we are all peer support coaches within the Autistic Peer Support Coaching Collective, offering a variety of free and paid intentionally autistic spaces. You can learn more and follow us at our website, autisticcoaches.com. You can best support the podcast by sharing this episode with your friends or joining our Patreon to access ad-free episodes. Thank you for listening to Autistic Stuff for Autistic People. New episodes come out on alternating Mondays. Send us your constructive comments and feedback via email at autisticstuffpodcast@gmail.com. Autistic Stuff for Autistic People is a production of Fox and Raven Media. For more podcasts from Fox and Raven Media, visit our website, foxandravenmedia.com.